voice of Nottingham.
In Hoods, Carl Felstrom describes the last moments of John and Joan Sterland. Here is an abridged extract from the passage.
The summer sun was already warming the flat landscape of the Lincolnshire coast when John and Joan Sterland awoke on August 8, 2004, in the modest bungalow they had made their new home. John, shirtless and in his summer shorts, flicked through a Sunday paper. Occasionally he looked up at the television, but Joan was feeling anxious. The day before, one of her daughters had left with the grandchildren after a wonderful few days' stay. Life appeared to be getting back to normal. But that morning one of her neighbours had called round to tell them she thought she had seen a tall, shadowy figure jumping over a fence and prowling in their back garden the evening before. Joan wanted to play it down to her neighbour. No need for them to know more than they have to, she thought. Probably just kids messing about, but I'd better tell John, she said. Thanks for letting me know, but probably nothing to get worried about. But Joan was worried, very worried. I'm going to ring the police at Nottingham in a bit, just to be on the safe side, she told John. Joan had every right to be scared. The past year had been a living nightmare. Michael O'Brien, her son from a previous relationship, had shot dead a young Nottingham man, Marvin Bradshaw, in a pub car park. Bradshaw had some very dangerous and powerful friends, and this had put not just O'Brien, but anyone related to him at risk. Even though John and Joan deplored the murder, they had since spent months looking over their shoulders and tensing at every knock on the door. Michael's trial for the shooting had recently concluded, and he had been jailed for life. Joan was ashamed of what he had done, and even more ashamed that he had hurled a tirade of abuse at the victim's family. When he was sentenced, he threw a cup of water in the direction of the victim's family and taunted them. That was just 2 weeks ago, and Joan had since heard that Marvin Bradshaw's best mate, Jamie Gunn, had also died. Jamie had cradled his friend's bloodied head in his arms as he lay dying. Unable to cope with his friend's death, his life had collapsed into a haze of drugs and drink, and his own body had given up. It was the worst possible news, and was bound to reopen old wounds. Jamie Gunn's uncle, Colin, was an infamous gang lord, and Joan rightly feared that he would want revenge yet again. On September 16, 2003, 2 weeks after Michael had shot Marvin Bradshaw, Joan and John had been forced to flee Nottingham. A few days after Michael was arrested, Joan and John were watching television in the home they rented in Carlton, Nottingham, when someone shot at their property. They both hit the floor as they heard the sound of a motorcycle revving and speeding off. Eventually they crawled up the staircase of the house, where Joan got to her mobile to dial 999. The next morning they moved out of the house and went straight to Bridlington on the Yorkshire coast without telling the police. They were soon traced and offered witness protection, but Joan was told she would have to make a full statement about Michael and the phone call he had made to her admitting his role in the murder if police were going to help them fully. She would also have to cut all connections with her 2 daughters because police would not provide them with protection. It was a step too far for Joan. She wanted protection for the whole family, her daughters and John's son and daughter. The police would not justify such a move. The costs were prohibitive. We will look after ourselves in that case, but we want you to keep us informed about what is going on in the meantime, she told officers. Joan knew Michael was capable of bad things, but the murder cut deep into her heart. Where had she gone wrong? Had Michael really become a monster? When he had first gone on the run, he had even threatened to have his stepfather kneecapped if Joan refused to help with food and clothes. She had told the police all this and more. After a week in the Crescent Hotel, the couple moved to Old Gould in Humberside for a few months. The small flat became a prison. Then in the new year of 2004, the opportunity of a bungalow came up in Trusthorpe. Joan told the police they had moved and they weren't happy. Joan, you are moving into an area that the Gunn family have serious connections with. They have all sorts of contacts in the area. All it takes is a slip of the tongue to the wrong person and they will find out where you are, a detective told her. I think we'll be all right, but just keep us informed, said Joan. That was 8 months ago. Now the very thing the police feared might be coming to pass, thought Joan. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Had someone said something at the wedding of John's son Lee, which they had attended a few weeks earlier at Newstead Abbey? John had been very worried when 3 car tyres had blown on the way to the wedding. He thought it was more than just a coincidence. By about 11 a.m, Joan had called the number she had been given by the police contact. she got through to Tony Webster, the duty inspector on call, and explained her concerns. D.I. Webster was well aware of the Sterling case and of the Bestwood cartel. "I'm worried because my neighbour said she saw someone in the back garden last night. What with Jamie Gunn dying and the end of the trial, I'm worried they might have found us. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, but can you look into it for me?" she asked him. "OK, Joan, leave it with me," the officer replied. D.I. Webster contacted Detective Chief Inspector Paul Cotty, who had been dealing with the Sterlings' concerns. Cotty arranged for a detective sergeant to call Lincolnshire Police. At 2 p.m. the bungalow telephone rang. Joan picked it up. It was a detective from Nottinghamshire Police. "I don't want police cars screaming up here, but if you can do something it would put my mind at rest," she told him. "Joan, I'll get Lincolnshire to send someone over. We'll keep it low-key, don't worry," he replied. Joan put the phone down, feeling slightly more reassured. It was almost 2:15 p.m. No one paid much notice to the two workmen in blue boiler suits, wearing caps and silver gloves, going in through the door of the bungalow, or the car parked on the curb with its hazard lights on. Joan heard the pleas of her husband John from the other room, and the sickening sound of gunfire. She rushed into the living room and saw John slumped on the sofa with 6 bullets in him, 2 in his neck. The 2 Beretta-carrying gunmen moved swiftly and backed her into the bedroom. She realized the end was near, but knelt down, pleading with the gunman. "Please don't do this. I've got grandchildren," she screamed. 4 bullets hit her. The fatal wound was to her neck. She slumped down into the narrow space between the side of the bed and the wall. Nearby was a picture of her son Michael. Just below that was a bullet mark. The shooting was neither heard nor reported, and it was 7 hours before the police first arrived, in belated response to Joan's earlier call. John's body was slumped on the sofa, newspapers still by his side, and the flickering television screen illuminating the now darkening room. John had been hit by 6 bullets, 3 from each pistol. PC Kevin Jackson didn't spot Joan's crumpled body lying between the wall and the bed in their bedroom. It would not be discovered until CID officers arrived at the murder scene another 3 hours later. She had been hit by 4 bullets, 3 from one of the assassins and 1 from the other. It would not be long before detectives realized the painfully sad and violent scene before them bore an indelible, blood-soaked label, "Made in Nottingham."
The city of legends, where the news breaks. This is Nottingham.